There's a difference between liking a house and actually getting it. Redfin is built to make up that difference and close the gap between finding and owning the home for you. Redfin agents close twice as many deals as other agents. So when you find a home you love, you're not a step behind when it comes to making an offer. That means less watching great homes disappear and more focus on the one you'll call home. Redfin helps turn saved listings into real addresses. Get started at redfin.com. Own the dream.
Oh yeah, look at my life. Hey now, hey now, yeah. Hey now. Oh yeah, look at my life out here on the road. Oh yeah, look at my life. Hey now, yeah. Oh yeah, look at my life out here on the road.
Hey now! Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to Scott Fox After 9. Usually on Fridays, I do listener DMs, and I got to tell you that I'm preempting it. I have to. I don't remember a week this busy in a long time. And there's so much going on that I've got to get it in here because in years to come, podcasts like this will become almost like an audio textbook on the history of the moment that we're living in right now. And there's just some stuff I can't let it slide. So today, I'm going to do more of a regular episode of Scott Fox After 9. If you sent in a listener DM, please know I love the listener DMs. That's my favorite episode of the week. I'm not forgetting about them. I'm just moving them back to Monday, but I will do them. And if you sent one in, don't worry. I've got it, but I'm going to push it back just a couple of days because I really want to get some stuff out there for you. It's been an eventful 24 hours. So give me about 40 minutes here, and I'm going to give you so much information, so much content that you're probably not going to get from the mainstream media. I'm going to start off, though, with something that is getting a ton of coverage, including from the mainstream media, because it's kind of about the mainstream media. Yesterday, in the Ontario Legislature, Premier Doug Ford was trying to defend his changes to the Freedom of Information laws. Asking him a question, a former anchor on CP24, that's a cable news channel in Toronto, by the way. Her name is Stephanie Smyth. Stephanie's no longer on television. However, she has gone into politics. She was elected as a Toronto member of provincial parliament for the Liberal Party. She was asking a question of the Premier yesterday, and the Premier's response to this has got a lot of people wondering, what is going on with Doug Ford? Listen to this.
Ontarians don't need a new number. They need transparency. So, Speaker, to the Premier, why does this Premier, who claims to be accountable, make it so very hard to hold?
Premier of Ontario.
You know something, Madam Speaker? Do you know why the member's down here? Because CP24 didn't want her anymore. Bottom line. Simple. That's why she's down here. And she was just a promoter for Liberal agenda, NDP agenda, when she was doing interviews. You think there could be anything else? That is the facts. That is the truth. Yeah, it hurts, doesn't it? It hurts when you aren't wanted. There's a reason why you're here.
Wow. Wow. That is the Premier of Ontario doing a personal attack on a fellow member of the legislature, a female politician, and a former journalist. That's what Doug Ford said. That sounded really harsh to me. And what I'm trying to figure out is, am I being overly defensive of a colleague, or was Doug Ford way out of line to say something like that? Let me give you a little bit of the follow-up that happened after the Premier made those remarks. First off, Stephanie Smyth herself spoke outside the legislature.
I think it shows, as John is saying, a pattern of, crash and burn. And or the cheese is slipping off the cracker, whatever the Premier wants to say. And I think that it shows that what we're doing is working. We're drawing attention to this issue of the FOIs and the accountability. You saw he was asked how many times, maybe a dozen times, to explain about his cell phone, and he still wouldn't do it. And finally, when I did ask again, he was out of other things to talk about, so he made it personal. And that is unacceptable. And as John was saying, like beneath the office. Not to mention Trumpian. We're seeing more and more of that with him. I get more calls than anybody in the world. Where are we? So what we're doing, our opposition as Liberals, I think, is absolutely working when we see something like this today.
When he went personal like that, did you take it as a sign that he didn't have anything to argue with?
100%. I thought, oh, okay, this is working. It's getting to him. And it's just, it's just one more step of showing that just something isn't right with him.
I thought Stephanie seemed kind of rattled there, to be honest with you, and I don't blame her. That's a weird attack coming from the Premier of Ontario to go after her personally like that and to insist and double down on nobody wants you. Yikes. So that was Stephanie outside the legislature. After she took a couple of minutes and composed herself, she went to her office and she recorded a video. Here's the other comment that Stephanie made.
Hi, lots of conversation today about what happened at Queen's Park when Premier Ford said I wasn't at CP24 anymore because they didn't want me. Okay, that stung at first, but then started thinking, he sure wanted me when I was at CP24, interviewed him dozens of times. But I don't want to make this about me. I want to make this about this Premier sidestepping accountability. We asked him over and over, about 12 times today, about his cell phone records. What is he trying to hide? What is he trying to hide? He wouldn't answer. Every time he'd go talking about jobs or some other piece of nonsense that had nothing to do with the accountability we are looking for. Then I stood up and then he fired that rocket. Well, he's going to be sorry he did. We're still going to keep asking. In fact, I have tabled an Opposition Day motion for May 4th about the FOI legislation specifically so that it isn't going away. And what else isn't going away is my overall question. Since it didn't really get heard today in question period because there was so much, pandemonium, I don't know if that's the word, but craziness after he asked or made that declaration. I'll ask again. Speaker, if the Premier has nothing to hide, why does he work so hard to hide?
Okay, that's what Stephanie had to say. 2 follow-up comments. And so far, as I record, nothing from Premier Ford. But there are widespread calls from every political stripe for Doug Ford to apologize for that comment that he made to Stephanie Smyth yesterday in the Ontario Legislature. Friends, I'm going to move on. It's Friday. Let's keep going at a good pace here. Yesterday, I played you some audio from some committee hearings that were happening in America. The U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer. There's a clip that I didn't play yesterday that I think you should hear.
Let's hope we can resolve that. And one last issue I'd like to discuss with is the Canadian prohibition on bulk imports of fresh fruit and produce. My district is the 19th largest fruit producing district in the nation and the 21st largest vegetable producing district in the nation. Once again, as detailed in the NTE, Canada severely restricts imports of bulk fresh fruits and vegetables. Have you and your team raised this issue with our Canadian counterparts, and where are they with this issue as well?
We thought this would be an easy one for them to fix. They've refused to fix it. It's in the national trade estimate. It has been for a long time. It's one of those crazy things when you hear that it exists. People say, oh, well, Canada, they're our best friends. But then they do things like this where you can't ship fruit if it's in a package above a certain size. It doesn't even make economic sense. So we've raised it with them. We'll continue to do it.
What are we doing here? We're paying insane prices at the grocery store. Now we find out that's partly our own doing? Canadian regulation? That bids up the cost of produce, which we all need, which we're all supposed to eat for a healthy lifestyle. What the hell is going on? I didn't even know that. I didn't know that we were doing that. The Americans are aware, and now more and more people are starting to figure it out. That, by the way, is not something you are hearing on the mainstream media news, and you should. If they're supposed to present the whole story to you, that is an important part of the story. Now, that was the trade representative for America. Now let's hear from the deputy U.S. trade representative. His name is Rick Switzer. This clip is about 2.5 minutes long. This one is very, very blunt. It's very direct. You can tell he is not a fan of doing negotiations with Canada. But given that he is the deputy U.S. trade representative, I think we should hear from Rick. Listen to this.
I think having some discipline on reminding folks how valuable it is. There really is no other choice. What I'll say is that the countries that are led by serious leaders, and I'll say President Sheinbaum is a serious leader in Mexico. When we came in and we were talking, Ambassador Greer was just there, we're talking to Mexico about this, and the president has spoken to, directly about this. They have been very serious. Look, we know the United States is our most important economic partner, that it is the policy of President Sheinbaum that the United States and Mexico will have a positive economic relationship, and that we know that we'll have some friction and we'll have to figure it out, but we're going to figure it out, right? This is the bottom line. There are other economies who decided to make it personal, and I think Carney has made it personal. I think it's political malpractice for the Prime Minister of a Canadian, of Canada to pit politically himself against any president. I don't care what the president is, who the president is, what party they represent. It's political malpractice. Canada is dependent upon the U.S. economy. That's just a fact, right? That's not hubris. That's not something that Canada needs to be concerned about. It's not something Canada can change, right? The fundamental fact is geography wins out. Canada is located where it's located. They can't move shop. They can have a weak economy that is underperforming and not doing well, and Carney can feel superior, or they can have an economy that participates as a partner of the U.S. economy, and Carney can do what a grown-up should do, which is figure it out, and come like President Sheinbaum and decide that the United States and Canada will have a positive economic relationship. And it's my job as a person who's supposed to protect Canadian jobs, Canadian citizens, and the Canadian economy to not let my ego and my feelings dictate what's best for my own economy.
That's a very powerful statement. Do you think that this will have implications for USMCA, for the negotiations between the U.S., Mexico, and Canada?
Yeah, of course it is. Just can't, right? Not like, look, was Ambassador Greer in Canada? Did he meet with Carney? No. Was he in Mexico on Monday? Did he meet with President Sheinbaum? Yes. We have issues with Mexico we're still working through, but Mexico intends on coming to an agreement with us. We intend on coming to agreement with them. The grown-ups are in the room talking because there's a grown-up in the presidency in leadership there, and I would argue there's not a grown-up in Canada in charge there. You don't go out of your way to antagonize the leader of the country that you are absolutely existentially tied to. It's just political malpractice.
By the way, yesterday, Ontario Premier Doug Ford did exactly that. Multiple television news interviews taking shots at Donald Trump. That again was the U.S. Deputy Trade Representative Rick Switzer talking about the USMCA negotiation. Let's keep moving on. Megyn Kelly podcast. She had a special guest on, none other than Russell Brand. He brought up the topic of Justin Trudeau. Who's Justin Trudeau dating? Russell's ex-wife, Katy Perry.
I've put up with a lot with that ex-wife of mine, but you took it too far, KP. With Orlando Bloom.
Yeah, respectable.
Legolas. I love that guy.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Good
Fair
company.
enough. Trudeau, though, potentially Fidel Castro's spawn? No. There we draw the line.
It's horrible.
Trudeau. I did not like that Trudeau, because, no, he's a child of God and he's beloved. But what I will say is I didn't like it when he was having a go at them truckers. I didn't like they kept blacking up inexplicably and then sort of pretending to be ultra woke. He does have fantastic hair. I didn't like it when they invited, I think, an actual Nazi into the Canadian Parliament.
Yes, they did.
I specifically don't like what is typified by those good-looking politicians, Obama, Macron, Blair. They're sort of good looking and they're charming, but you think, who do you work for really? Who's running this? Because it can't be you. And I don't like that sort of pose of compassion that's absolutely undergirded by selfishness, probably because I recognise it myself. I'm so selfish sometimes. But I don't like that. The trucker bit's what got me. They called them Nazis.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
And they were just being sort of bold and brave and stuff. So yes, is she still going out with him?
Yeah, we checked this morning and it appears that they are still together.
Keep checking. She could come to her senses any minute.
It is disappointing, isn't it, when your ex gets together with somebody who doesn't make you look good at all, doesn't increase the average at all.
Look at the category I'm in now. I'm in with Trudeau. It'll be a relief to be in a rape trial. See? Phew.
Oh, jeez. Yikes. Hey, just a little bit. I wanted to get that on your radar, and it's a good intro because I've got some Justin Trudeau audio. I don't know where he was or why he was invited there, but Justin Trudeau was doing a Q&A, and it looks like he was speaking to a group of people. He's wearing a suit this time. He's left behind the jeans and T-shirt and backwards cap. He's doing the ex-prime minister thing again, and he said something very interesting about Canada and China.
So, about 10 years ago, Bombardier, a Canadian aerospace company that you know for making the Global Series and Challengers, decided it was going to get into the commercial aircraft building business. And it built something called the C Series, which was the most modern, single-aisle, extremely fuel-efficient, amazing plane. And we're in the process, they got it certified, they were in the process of trying to sell it. And Airbus and Boeing did everything they could do to prevent Bombardier from being able to sell those aircraft. They were talking to all their customers, don't you dare put in an order for the C Series, don't you dare, don't you dare. And finally, Bombardier started really struggling. They had this beautiful aircraft, but they just couldn't get any customers for it. So what happens? China comes knocking on Canada's door, on Bombardier's door, and pulls up a dump truck full of money and says, we'll keep all the jobs in Bombardier across the country. Canada won't be trouble in this, but we'll buy Bombardier. We'll be able to get ourselves a commercial jet. So Boeing and Airbus that were busy trying to put out Bombardier out of business because they didn't want Bombardier to be a contest, almost drove us into China's arms, where China would have been obviously a much more significant competitor to those two dominant players. But concretely, it took me around the G7 table in Sicily, my second G7 in 2017, saying to Macron and Merkel and Trump, you are driving us into Chinese pockets, Chinese hands to protect jobs. They're willing to pay anything to get this. We don't want this to happen for our prosperity as Western countries. What can we do about it? Because Boeing is busy trying to put Bombardier out of business, and Airbus has crossed its arms and indifferent. Well, 6 months later, because of those conversations, Airbus bought the C Series, which now flies as the Airbus 220. They're made in Canada and elsewhere, and Canada's now the fifth Airbus country. So this was an example of internal economic pressures and coercion that where we're busy competing with ourselves as like-minded nations, we almost ended up giving a significant competitor that doesn't share the same approach and views as us a significant let-up. And that wouldn't have happened if I and my team hadn't said, hey, guys, this is the trend line. We need to make that happen.
Justin Trudeau. I'm not 100% sure of the point he's trying to make, but two things stand out from that clip. Two things you can take from it. Number one, when China wants something, they will, and to use Trudeau's words, back up a dump truck full of money to get what they want. They are not above flashing around some cash to get what they want. Okay. All right. Now it's starting to make a little more sense. That's good. And what else did he say? They almost forced us into the arms of a country that is not a like-minded country. I always thought Trudeau was very aligned with China. Turns out maybe he's not as aligned with China as his replacement, Mark Carney, because Mark Carney is very in on working with China, as you likely know. Now I want to go to some committee audio. I've been doing that a lot this week because there's been some interesting committee testimony. Some of the audio that I've been playing this week has been from Ron Butler, the mortgage guy. Slowly clips are coming out from this hearing. I've got one here that's only about a minute long, but I want you to hear it. This is Ron Butler talking about housing.
So witnesses have testified that Canadians are paying their debts by refinancing, just stretching them out over a longer period of time, by exhausting their savings, and by skimping on other purchases, including basic necessities. Is this a sustainable way to deal with increasing indebtedness?
It is not sustainable. It constantly proves to be unsustainable. We have observed in the last 18 months a somewhat alarming growth in power of sale transactions, bank ordered sale transactions. Mortgage default rates have continued to increase. We anticipate mortgage default rates will also increase this year, throughout the year, and potentially into next year. There is just not any good way to handle extremely large mortgages, which people took on in 2020, 2021, and 2022, first quarter. As soon as the rate goes up, unless incomes have soared, there's no easy way to manage that.
Yikes. That is ominous from Ron. But I did want you to hear that because it's true. It's actually very true. A lot of people have got a lot of debt and incomes haven't gone up to a level where it matches and it's equal and it balances each other out. So people are doing things like refinancing their home, taking on more debt. And what does that do? That gives them a higher mortgage. Well, as house prices come down, that means they're further underwater or potentially underwater with their mortgage. That means the mortgage is more than what the house is worth. And that's a situation that nobody wants to be in. I'm going to keep going. Rapid fire. Let's move on. I want to go to a committee hearing into the state of Canada's broadcasting system. What's going on with the mainstream media? Great member of parliament from Lethbridge, Rachel Thomas, has been doing some great work on this committee, asking important questions. Here is Rachel talking about the CBC.
Ms. Bouchard, one of the comments that you made in your opening remarks, you said that foreign giants are monopolizing ad revenue. And then further to that, another witness added that it would be about 75% of Canadian ad dollars that are going to foreign giants. Certainly, we see that as an issue, and it is concerning. My concern is furthered, though, however. It doesn't just seem to be advertisers that are choosing these foreign giants, but actually it's our Prime Minister. Just on Sunday, he came out with what seemed to mimic a State of the Address, similar to something that Trump would give in the United States. And instead of choosing the CBC, which I would think would be his natural choice given that it's Canada's broadcaster, he chose to put it out on YouTube, an American tech giant. And so I'm curious what you make of this and why you think that choice was made by the Prime Minister in his office.
Not privy to why the Prime Minister chose this particular vehicle. Of course, there are processes for government address to the nation through CBC for official announcements of various kinds. Otherwise, we have standing invitations for most politicians to come to our various programs. I don't know. I can't speculate on the question.
Does it concern you that the Prime Minister chose to go with an American platform, YouTube, instead of coming to Canada's public broadcaster, the CBC?
And I don't have a particular position as the public broadcaster in terms of where the Prime Minister chooses to address his concerns. He comes to our stations. He's come to various programs, and I think there's plenty of journalists from CBC who are able to ask questions and provide some exposure to his statements, but this particular statement I can't explain.
That is Marie-Philippe Bouchard. She had an opportunity right there to call out the Prime Minister to say, hey, we have a national broadcaster and we have an interest in putting good content on there that Canadians want to see. An address from the Prime Minister, that seems like something that we should probably have on the CBC. She had that opportunity to do it. She didn't do it. She wouldn't even call out the Prime Minister for doing his address on YouTube as opposed to doing it on the CBC. Now, at the end of the day, I think the Prime Minister was actually right. If you want to go to where Canadians are and you want to give the message in a way that you can control and that the most Canadians are probably going to see it, it's probably best to not go to the CBC. It probably is best to go on YouTube because that's where the most eyes are. So I don't really blame the Prime Minister for that. CBC aired it anyway. So I don't think the Prime Minister really needs to worry too much about coverage from the CBC. But speaking of the Prime Minister, he did a news conference yesterday. There were a couple of contentious points in that. I'm going to play those for you and a couple of contentious points from the news conference that Pierre Poilievre did. That's coming up in just a sec. Before I get there, though, one more. Yesterday, the Premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith, talking about the subject of the Alberta referendum. What about Alberta independence? Danielle got asked a great question. It was a direct question, which I think is fair, and I like how she answered it.
Kind of want to address the elephant in the room in my perspective, the question of independence. When you talk to people, whether they be politicians or voters, whether it be in Alberta or outside of Alberta, when you talk about a referendum in the fall, most people already assume that independence is going to be on the ballot. Why not just do it? Just choose a question that is clear, put it on the ballot right now so that conversation can actually start. You can have a yes and a no camp. Why not do it today?
Well, because my position is that we should remain in Canada. That's the position of our government. We believe that we should assert sovereignty within a united Canada. So that is our policy. And so others are putting forward a proposal that would have a different position. And so it would not be a government-sponsored question. It would be one that would be a citizen-initiated response. And so we're waiting to see if the court will affirm that and allow the signature collection to go to be validated. But I don't want to prejudge what the court's going to do. I believe they're going to be making their decision in May.
Okay, I'm glad to hear again Danielle Smith say, I'm not in favor of Alberta separating. She's in favor of sovereign Alberta within Canada. I'm not 100% sure what that means, but either way, Alberta, as far as she's concerned, is staying part of the union. And I think that's good news for everybody because, well, hey, that's where a lot of the money is coming from that funds this operation. Yesterday in Ottawa, opposition leader Pierre Poilievre, he was doing an interview. Actually, you know what? Before I get to that, hang on. I want to do something else here. Fellow podcaster Jasmine Lane sat down and did an interview with Pierre Poilievre, and I'm told it's going to drop this weekend. Let me give you just a little preview of what Jasmine is going to be talking to Pierre about.
Everywhere I go, people are talking like that. My message is to you, are you really going to let this Liberal government drive you out of your home? This is your country. I think we need leadership that gives people hope. Hope that things
is not
actually...
a plan, though, Mr. Poilievre.
Well, I'll tell you something. Neither is what we've seen over the last year, where the economy is tanking. And those are his words, by the way, before anyone accuses us of being of making things up. He said it, right?
Well, I mean, I just want to say, Mr. Poilievre, how much steel do you use anyway?
That's right. This is another example of the economic mastermind, Mark Carney, who says we don't use steel anymore. Yeah. Anyway.
That's just a little bit. That full interview is going to drop today, Friday, April 24th at 7 p.m. Central Time. And good job to Jasmine for getting that interview with Pierre Poilievre.
Warning, the following ZipRecruiter radio spot you are about to hear is going to be filled with F-words.
When you're hiring, we at ZipRecruiter know you can feel frustrated, forlorn even, like your efforts are futile, and you can spend a fortune trying to find fabulous people, only to get flooded with candidates who are just fine. Fortunately, ZipRecruiter figured out how to fix all that. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/zip. With ZipRecruiter, you can forget your frustrations because we find the right people for your roles fast, which is our absolute favorite F word. In fact, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day.
Fantastic.
So, whether you need to hire 4, 40, or 400 people, get ready to meet first-rate talent. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/zip to try ZipRecruiter for free. Don't forget, that's ZipRecruiter.com/zip. Finally, that's ZipRecruiter.com/zip.
Now I want to take you to Ottawa. Yesterday, Pierre was facing reporters right outside the House of Commons.
On the question of the Canada-U.S. deal, you've talked a lot about Canada needing to use its leverage. The provinces are using leverage by keeping American booze off the shelves. Do you think they should put it back on and remove this irritant that the U.S. has expressed?
Well, first of all, I think we should focus on the big question here, which is that the American, after Mr. Carney squandered all of our leverage by making a whole series of upfront concessions and getting nothing in return while he dragged out the matter, we've seen the Americans double tariffs on steel and aluminum and triple them on lumber. So that is what happens when you squander leverage, as Mr. Carney has done. I don't think we should squander any more leverage after learning from Mr. Carney's mistakes. But let's also focus on the reality that we're talking about 2.6 million Canadian jobs that could be ruptured if we don't get this right. That is the big focus, and not whether I don't think we need to spend 3 or 4 days debating whether we should drink bourbon or not. I think we should discuss whether 2.6 million Canadians are going to have their jobs. And the way to get those jobs secured is to get a tariff-free trade deal with the U.S. I'm the only one, by the way, who's presented a plan to get such a tariff-free trade deal. We need to get it done.
Interesting that Pierre didn't directly answer that question. It was very simple. Many provinces have removed U.S. alcohol from the store shelves, and the Americans have let it be known they don't like that at all. Would you put the American liquor back on the shelves? He didn't give a direct answer, though, and I'm kind of curious as to why. Pierre is an Alberta member of parliament, and in Alberta, they've put American booze back on the shelves. So is Saskatchewan. Those are the only two, though. It's still banned in BC, Ontario, throughout the Maritimes, Quebec, and more. I don't know where we go from here. I'm really not sure about the alcohol at this point. And I'm in favor, by the way, of putting it back on the shelves. That's just me personally. I don't think we should be retaliating that way because the Americans didn't do that to us. But at this point, I almost think they might as well leave it off because Pierre is quite right. We have to maintain our leverage.
If tariffs are the starting point for any conversations with the Americans, is it worth going forward and baking in those tariffs for another 5-year period?
I don't understand the question.
The Americans have made clear that tariffs are the baseline for any trade agreement they sign with any partner nation, friendly or not. Is it worthwhile for Canada to go into those negotiations if tariffs are a starting point? Are the entry fee to getting a new CUSMA, is it worth going into those negotiations?
Well, I understood from the Prime Minister's remarks that he said today there wasn't an entry fee. So I don't know if you heard that.
The Americans keep saying that tariffs are a prerequisite for any deal, and all of their previous deals have included tariffs. Do you think you could get a deal that does not include tariffs?
Yes. And I've already presented my plan on that. You build up your leverage, and you make it clear that the Americans only get what they want if we get what we want. What do they want? They've made it very clear. They need critical minerals. We have 10 of the 12 NATO-defined critical minerals that are necessary to fight a modern war. We have the aluminum that goes into fighter jets. We have the tungsten that goes into armor-piercing equipment. We have the germanium that goes into night vision technology. The list goes on. What I've said is we would fashion a strategic reserve of those minerals plus oil, and we would make it legally available at market rates to countries that have tariff-free trade with us so that they would have the security that, God forbid, if we go into a war, they can arm themselves. I would also put forward an auto plan that has a formula to massively increase production in Canada and in the United States, which is the opposite of what's happening in both countries right now. The Americans are losing auto production because there's a terrible trade formula. I put forward a formula that will make the Americans and the Canadians produce more automobiles, which means that both of us get what we want. I've published these plans in painstaking detail. And by the way, I haven't seen anything analogous from Mark Carney, who's been Prime Minister for a year and who was elected because we were told he knew how to negotiate these things. So it seems like Mark Carney has waved the white flag and accepted permanent job-destroying tariffs on aluminum, steel, autos, and lumber. And that will mean a massive rupture of jobs. He wants to rupture jobs. I want tariff-free trade.
You said that you don't think we should spend the next 3 or 4 days debating around whether we should be drinking bourbon or not. I just want to clarify. Does that mean you think it's time for premiers to put American booze back on the shelves?
No, I haven't said that.
But you think you're fine with the premiers keeping the American booze off the shelves?
Sure. At the end of the day, we're talking about my point is we're talking about a $700 billion, nearly $1 trillion trade deal. Okay? So what I'm saying is let's get focused on the real issue, which is that a fifth of our economy depends on this trade relationship. We need to focus on the real issues of getting tariffs removed on steel, aluminum, lumber, and autos, and getting back to tariff-free trade. That's what our focus should be. And I think the Prime Minister should get away from all of the theatrics, the YouTube videos, and the distractions and tell us how he's going to achieve that.
Okay, you now know exactly where Pierre Poilievre stands. You certainly can't say anymore that he doesn't have a plan. He's laid out his plan. That's what he wants to do. And I don't think the Americans would be all that upset about that plan being put in front of them. Yeah, they want access to those critical minerals and they want oil and a few other things that we've got too. There's no reason we can't work together. Let's get down to it. Let's start negotiating. That's the plan from Pierre Poilievre. There is one more question I want to play for you, and then I'm going to go on to the Prime Minister.
You had a lot of complaints about the Bank of Canada when they jacked up interest rates. They've lowered them faster than the U.S. Inflation is, the interest rates are lower. So you also at one point suggested the Bank of Canada government should be fired. You can Google the list of nations who fired their central bank chiefs. It's like Zambia, South Sudan, Iran, Egypt. What does it say about your economic education that you want to join that kind of club?
Well, that's just false. So if I could, your comments are just false. What does it say about my academic education? Well, I'll tell you, my education is in predicting what actually comes to pass. So back in 2020, Mark Carney and I both made predictions. You can see them. They're on tape. Mark Carney said that COVID would lead to deflation right before the worst inflation in 4 decades. I said we would have inflation, and ultimately was proven right by the facts. I'm not finished. Then I said we should not print money because it would drive up the cost of everything. Mark Carney openly advised the United Kingdom and Canada to print cash. What did we get? We got the worst inflation. We got twice as many people at food banks. In just 7 years, we've doubled food bank lineups. A catastrophic prediction. I also said we would have a housing crisis back in 2020. What did we get? The highest housing costs in the G7. The only country that came even close was the UK. Why? Because Mark Carney, as governor of the Bank of England, printed so much money that he caused a housing crisis in that country. So I think we should judge qualifications based on actual results and who was proven right. On all of the issues of the last 10 years, on carbon taxes, oil and gas production, pipelines, money printing, inflation, housing, I have been right, and Mr. Carney has been wrong. And I say that with the greatest humility.
Whew, it's hot in here. Holy cow. That was, that's how to do it. Hey, I think that's great. Mark Carney, no doubt, has an impressive resume. Was it Oxford he went to? Okay, so yeah, he's got some academic credentials. But does that matter if you're wrong? A lot on all of the issues that matter. Now let's hear from the Prime Minister. Yesterday, he too was out speaking to the media.
Marco Vigliotti, iPolitics. I want to ask about the status of the trade talks because I'm admittedly a bit confused. The Americans, when I talk to them, they don't really kind of understand where this talk of an entry fee is coming from, saying we've been very, very clear with the Canadians what our trade irritants are. Yep. You had Howard Lutnick, you had Jameson Greer yesterday doubling down that dairy and alcohol in particular were huge barriers to restarting trade talks. And Jameson Greer even threatened retaliatory actions if you don't convince your provincial colleagues to remove some of those bans on U.S. liquor. So I got to ask, considering yesterday you said, I'm not backing down, we're not going to make any concessions to get Americans to come to the table. What's the game plan here? Or what are you prepared to do to get Americans at the table here? Or are you comfortable with this kind of awkward status quo that we have right now?
Look, I don't think that was an exact quote of what I said yesterday, so I'm not going to associate myself with the way you framed it. There are a series of trade issues between the countries. Most of the issues have been raised by the United States, either in terms of things they want to see changed in Canada. There are a series of tariff measures the United States has put in place which are in violation of the existing agreement. The tariffs on steel, the tariffs on aluminum, the tariffs on automobiles, the tariffs on forest products. Those are not consistent with the existing agreement. We look forward to sitting down. We have an exchange around these issues, both in terms of understanding what I'll use their term, they often use, trade irritants, a series of measures, which would include actions that have been taken in response to the American measures, such as the provincial actions. These are provincial actions with respect to alcohol on the shelves. I mean, you've got to remember, the client here are the provincial liquor authorities. They make the decisions what they put on their shelf. And they make those decisions based on a series of considerations, and they've taken that into account. So our work is as follows. With respect specifically to the negotiations, is to be prepared on all of the issues to provide our perspective and address, to negotiate in the round on all of these issues. This is a review process that's baked into the existing framework of the agreement, and as well to see where there are opportunities where we can be stronger together, and there are a number of those. We have those discussions as a whole. You prefaced your question where you don't know where this talk of a quote entry fee. I don't know where the talk of a quote entry fee is from. Certainly not coming from me. It's not language I've ever used, and it's not language I've ever heard from the President of the United States. So, look, we're ready. We have an exchange. It's more than ready. There's exchange on both understanding the issues and on opportunities for cooperation. It's a negotiation. These things have their own rhythm, and they also have what's happening above the surface and what's happening below the surface, and we'll see in the fullness of time.
Okay. Wow, that was a long response there from the Prime Minister. I would suggest that maybe he try and get that a little more concise, but his point is taken. Number one, he is not accepting any responsibility personally for the alcohol being taken off the shelves. He is saying those are provincial liquor authorities that did that. Okay, I don't believe him. I think that's a lie. I think this was a coordinated effort led entirely by the Prime Minister's office about a year ago. I think that was all. I think that came from the top down. It also proves that we have a government liquor monopoly in this country, a government liquor monopoly. The government should not be telling adults what they can and can't drink. And they can say this is all about patriotism, but at the end of the day, you got to let people make their own decisions. And if people don't want to sacrifice their California wine or their Kentucky bourbon over a point that our leaders are trying to make, then that should be up to them. It shouldn't be up to the liquor authority to do that. And I still think it's wrong what they did. Having said that, now it seems like we're getting closer to the end. So at this point, it would be silly to give up that leverage. Just keep it now. But we got to talk about provincial liquor authorities once all of this is done, because I say it's time to disband them.
Yeah, on that same vein, I guess my confusion stems from the fact that the Americans are saying, not really a negotiation. We're laying out what we need to see Canada do, and Canada's not meeting us there.
That's a negotiation. That's a position. See, Yana, there's two parties in a negotiation. One, we're not sitting here taking notes. Okay, and taking instruction from the United States, understanding their position, understand where it's in Canada's interest, when in our joint interests to be stronger together, and this is a government that can do many things at one time. We set up, to go back to today, we set up Build Canada.
Okay, he's going to talk about a housing announcement, and frankly, I don't believe that those houses are going to get built anyway, so I'm going to respectfully cut the Prime Minister off there. I will say, though, that he's absolutely right. This is a negotiation, and that's something that everybody has got to keep in mind. Every time Donald Trump says something stupid or sends out something crazy on social media, people flip out. He's negotiating, and it's in a non-traditional way, but he literally wrote the book on the art of the deal. He's negotiating, and sometimes it's a little unpleasant what he has to say. Sometimes we don't want to hear it. Sometimes it's just flat out inaccurate or wrong. But he's negotiating. He's playing a game. He's trying to get what he wants and the best deal for his country. Our leaders are trying to get the best deal for our country.
Good morning, Najud Amelise, Bloomberg News. I just want to follow up on carbon pricing and the pushback from the oil and gas sector on how it's making them, as they say, less competitive globally. I'm wondering, on the $130 per ton price, what's the timeline you're looking at of reaching that effective price, and is it 2030?
On the second part of your question, that's obviously it's part of the discussion. Everything is connected within the discussions with Alberta, and the key is to, at its base, from our perspective, to have an effective functioning carbon market with respect to the competitiveness of our oil and gas sector. Our oil production is at a record high. There's a series of measures that can further expand that. If you map in on a per barrel basis, what's the biggest determinant of, one of the biggest determinants, maybe put it this way, of the profitability, competitiveness of the oil and gas sector is going to be our ability to diversify our markets away from the United States.
Follow up. Okay, I'm going to take that as you saying that you don't have a timeline or a date.
I wouldn't say that, but I didn't say that.
So you're not committing to one.
No, you're Bloomberg. You can't just read into my answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't answer the question, then yeah, that's certainly reasonable. You totally can. I'm going to disagree with the Prime Minister on that one there, but hey, let it be clearly known. The Prime Minister is still very much in favor of carbon pricing. That's where he wants this to go. In fact, he made another comment where the price of carbon may be too low. Yikes. Is he going to raise the carbon tax? Oh my God, that is not good. That is not good at all.
And one of the points that I would underscore, which is not well understood, is that the effective carbon price in this country is actually quite low relative to the headline price, in the $20 to $30 in most Canadian markets. And that's something we're working to rectify.
Yikes. Rectify it? No, don't rectify it. Leave it low. In fact, get rid of the carbon tax altogether. People don't like it. You were right last year when you said it's divisive. Get rid of it. You don't have to raise it.
And one of the points I would underscore, which is not well understood, is that the effective carbon price in this country is actually quite low relative to the headline price, in the $20 to $30 in most Canadian markets. And that's something we're working to rectify.
Yeah, it sounds like he's going to double down and raise the carbon tax. Friends, listen, I really appreciate your time. Again, I apologize for having to preempt listener DMs today, but I will do them. Fear not. They will be happening likely on Monday. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. Go Raptors. Go Blue Jays. Go Toronto Rock. Rock versus the Rush in Saskatchewan on Saturday night. That's going to be great. The winner goes on to the best of 3 second round. The loser, done for the season. Go Rock, go. OHL playoffs are on this weekend, too. I'm kind of conflicted because of where my radio station is. I'm a Kitchener Rangers fan. I grew up in Waterloo region, Cambridge to be exact, and I have always cheered for the Kitchener Rangers when it comes to OHL hockey. And they're in the Western Conference Final against the Windsor Spitfires. However, the radio station I work at, Light 92.1, comes to you from Brantford, Ontario, home of the Bulldogs. And the Bulldogs are in the Eastern Conference Final. They're taking on the Barrie Colts. The winner of these two series will play each other for the championship. And if it ends up being Kitchener versus Brantford, I might take 10 days off. Friends, enjoy your weekend. I will catch you right back here on Monday with your DMs and a lot more. Have a great one. I will leave you with the sounds of Pat James and The Whole Truth. Hey now.